check this out.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dave Haynes. I'm the editor of 169, which is a publication and blog, or I was going to say publication and blog, publication and podcast, God, about digital signage. I've been doing that since the dawn of man, and I know these two guys on the panel. It should be a really great session. Today, we're going to talk about future-proofing your digital signage and strategies that will help you scale that. Today, I've got with me Jimmy Hunt from Spectrio and Frank Pisano from Bluefin. Jimmy, do you want to, just for people who don't know that much about Spectrio, just kind of rattle off what you do there and what the company does?
Yeah, sure thing. And let me just say thank you, Dave. Thank you, Frank. Um, Frank's been a good friend, mentor of mine for years. So excited to have him on
Frank's a
webinar.
mentor?
Mentor
He
makes
is.
me
He
sound
is
old, but
indeed.
I appreciate it, Jimmy.
It's fun to see him not just on the golf course where he takes all my money. So it's good to have him today. Yeah, so this is going to be a really fun webinar. We're excited to do it. Jimmy Hunt here. I run sales and BD efforts at Spectrio. Our goal at Spectrio is to produce the top tier customer engagement technology for digital signage. So we produce the software that makes all of the screens go across the globe.
Frank.
Thanks for having me, both of you. We do appreciate it, and the collaboration with Spectrio. Frank Pisano, CEO of Bluefin International. I've been at the helm for about 2.5 years, I guess long enough that I can't talk in months any longer. But Bluefin is a global supplier of digital signage hardware. So that would include a variety of different display sizes and form factors, with embedded all-in-one systems and a lot of different customization ability that we can do as an organization. So we work really well with the ecosystem, including Spectrio and our collaboration. So definitely appreciate you guys having me.
To give a little more color to that, how I know Bluefin is and how you distinguish yourself from maybe a lot of specialty display guys is you started out doing small form factor displays primarily for retail. Uh, I think the roots of the company are like digital photo frames, and you kind of grew out from there. But it does a hell of a lot more than that now, and it's an interesting kind of riff about the idea of future proofing because in the early days couldn't really do that with what Bluefin had, but now you absolutely can, and you go from stuff that's just at the shelf edge all the way to as large as the kinds of displays that you would buy in a big box store, right?
Yeah, and I don't think we envision the company making 86-inch displays at any point of but our customer base has taken us there where they need specialty. They may need a big embedded operating system that can accomplish a lot more compute than what may be available off the shelf, or maybe it's touch interactivity, or it's some sense of specialization on that display, whether it's the brightness or the amount of haze we put on it or multiple mounting points. Just obviously not something you can get off the shelf, which ties in very nice to our future proofing your digital signage applications, right? That we'll talk about today.
So future proofing is a pretty broad term. If we can kind of narrow it down a little bit in terms of what it means for digital signage and why is it important? I mean, the obvious thing is you don't want to buy something that's not going to be useful in 2 years from now, but there's a lot more to it than that, right?
From a
Jimmy.
hardware perspective,
Well, okay, Frank, fine.
okay. I will ask from a hardware perspective. We obviously want to. We do a lot of consultative. Go and ask a lot of questions of the customers. How do clients want to engage? What is their long-term plans for the signage? What do they want to draw? They want to draw a customer's eye to something. That's where unique form factor many times comes into play. But what customers hate is to rip and replace hardware. So what we try to do is really ask a lot of those questions up front, figure out how long they intend for this hardware to be used, and then we service their needs based on their unique the things that they're going to be needing long term.
Yeah,
And Jimmy, that applies to software as well, right?
yeah, 100%. And what we're seeing is we're recommending companies when they think about the future proofing of their business and digital signage, they should focus on flexibility, scale, and future proofing both the hardware and the software decisions. With that, something I've been kicking around for a while now is the key is to treat signage not as a one-time install, but as a dynamic communications tool that needs to evolve alongside the business and its technology landscape. So what it is today may not be what it's going to look like a year, 2 years, 5 years from now, whether there is a renovation coming or a complete remodel. All of those things should play into how to prepare your business for the future.
Is this just a function of cost and trying to avoid downstream costs, or what all do you need to be thinking about, and why is this such a concern?
Yeah, so and I'll take that one, Frank. And I think for us, it's starting with the why and what the purpose is that you're trying to solve with signage. From there, it's to aim to strike the right balance between, to your point, value and cost, but also keep an eye on long-term durability and future scale. It's worth considering whether there's a path toward unifying everything under a single hardware or player solution. In regards to the software, there are so many amazing platforms out there today, Spectrio being one of them. The thing that's not talked about as often is what's critical beyond that. And that's why I think it's equally important to look at what does your partner offer you, whether it's great support, whether it's customer service, whether it's the ability to move quickly and innovate and ideate on product development. All those things play a pretty large factor in the decision of your digital signage provider.
Yeah, to add to that support that Jimmy's talking about is, I mean, that's critical, especially as you want to scale growth. We always talk about total cost of ownership as well, and there's signage applications that'll draw the eye, but nothing draws the eye like bad signage or signage that's off, right? With signage with an error message. So we always talk about minimizing downtime. We want to make sure that our customers are going to invest in signage that's going to work and enhance their brand or enhance what they're trying to accomplish in that space. And when that screen's off or has an error message, that's actually going to create just the opposite. You'd be better off with no signage at all. So why we always talk about that total cost of ownership, how long they want to deploy. Maybe they're putting it in a retail environment that's going to have a lot of high traffic. Maybe they should be looking at other ways to protect that signage. We do that at Bluefin by maybe putting IK10 glass on it if it's going to be in a high traffic area, or if it's going to have touch interactivity, making sure that touch interactivity is going to work well. That's why we encourage, the collaboration between us and ecosystem partners, just to make sure that their product, their software is working like a Swiss Army knife. That it does everything it's supposed to be. Is why we encourage proof of concepts before the larger rollouts happen, just to make sure this product's going to work and it's going to be seamless in their space and it's going to work for a long time.
And Frank, from your perspective, when you're working with retail and working with those kinds of clients, you've got to be thinking about form factor as well, right? Because you've got raw panels that are coming from display manufacturers, and they may change the shape just a little bit, and then it doesn't fit in the chassis that you guys have designed. So you have to kind of think through that stuff as well.
Oh, absolutely. And we get a lot of our business actually not at the first crack. They may deploy earlier, and it may be a signage application that wasn't high quality, or it may be that a retailer is just tired of the off-the-shelf display companies changing sizes and just a hair, or changing the mounting point, or changing the bezel depth. So the product isn't uniform over the lifespan of their project. And that's one thing that they come to us for, is they want to keep the design exactly the same. It's easy with 16:9 product, that 16:9 form factor. What we do, especially with our unique form factors and stretch, is we want to make sure that LCD that you were talking about, Dave, is commercially available and has a long lifespan. That's why we work super close with our vendor partners just to look at their roadmap. And so we want to make
Right.
sure that that product's going to be out for a long period of time and that it's not going to be discontinued if it's a off-the-shelf LCD. We do cut a lot of LCD, and then in that case, it doesn't matter. We're cutting it anyway. But if
Mhm.
there is an off-the-shelf size that we can get from our LCD vendors that would keep down costs, but we also want to make sure that that lifespan of that LCD is going to be healthy and they're not going to be changing. We're not going to be changing things out. Otherwise, we could easily get into cutting the LCD to make sure it fits a form factor, but it may be a little bit more expensive to do that.
Yeah, and to further what Frank said, I mean, that's why we love partners like Bluefin, because we're able to have these conversations on the front end, typically even when we're pitching or in the proposal phase to potential partner or client, to go through that proof of concept. Because like Frank said, what it looks like day one is probably not what it's going to look like day two or day 300, right? So going through that with a partner like Frank, they've done such a good job of still having that custom feel, but doing it at scale. And from a software standpoint, Dave, two more things I want to touch on in terms of this particular topic is one way to mitigate your risk from a client or partner side is to choose an open and scalable platform. So opt for CMS platforms that are API friendly, hardware agnostic, and that are regularly updated. This allows companies to integrate new tech, whether it's point of sale, whether it's a new product functionality, as they emerge. So being ahead of the game, being proactive, whether it's AI or advanced analytics, without needing to overhaul the entire system. The second thing, and this is tough because we're all chasing the next big deal, the next big network that we want to land, is to standardize when possible. And from a sales perspective, that's challenging because, like I said, I want to go and get everything. But while customization is critical and very important, standardizing on hardware or player types across the organization or particular verticals helps simplify updates and expansions down the road.
And Frank, your company has manufacturing capacity in China. So you have that advantage in terms of controlling your future, so to speak, in that you know what the build is. You know what's coming off the line, the components going in versus just ordering stuff from a third party. And as the container shows up, praying that it's what you thought it was. Is that important?
Yeah, so I would almost say it's one of our biggest features is that we actually own our own manufacturing facility. So we can produce small batches of proof of concepts to get things in customers' hands to make sure that they like what they're getting. They like how it's interacting with the software application that they use. The ability to run a small batch for a proof of concepts is huge. If we were working on a third party line, they're not going to want to run small batches for you. They're going to want to run to get things that, to capacity. We build our own boards and then we implement, if it's a proprietary player or if it's an Android or Linux or running Windows or BrightSign, there's a variety of different things that we would put onto that to make it that all in one. But to be able to produce those small quantities that we could scale with our customers, there's not a lot of other organizations out there that are willing to do that. And that is especially important with some of these unique form factors. We're replacing a lot of print signage right now with digital. There's a lot of reasons for that, but a lot of it, some of it comes around safety, some of it comes around user error. If you're going to a retail deployment, they got to change out a bunch of static signs. You might be asking a part-time employee to do a lot of that. It may not be consistent over the life of the project or multiple locations. So having the ability to update content remotely with some of our partners like Spectrio to get that consistent message across all locations is huge. And sometimes that starts in small quantities. Sometimes they tweak it after a proof of concept, which is a big value add that we can do and say it's not just right. We don't want our customers settling for good enough. It goes with the future proofing story again, and we want them to use something that we might not know what they want to do in 3 years from now with that same display.
And I think too, Frank, I mean, engaged each other a lot lately on, let's say, a large venue, right? A stadium, a coliseum, a university. There may be multiple functionalities and goals with signage, right? So even within a singular location, it could be the premium suites, it could be locker room, it could be concession. So having the ability to go to one partner potentially on both sides, software and hardware, and say, hey, like this is the total picture looks like this, but even within that, we need to communicate and say what particular piece of hardware or player or mount or whatever the case may be is best for the various functionalities within this location.
And it's interesting when you're talking about doing small runs on stuff. I would imagine people who are not all that familiar as end users, they're just getting into digital signage in some respect. They're probably going to make the assumption that, well, big global display manufacturer brands, of course they could do whatever we need, and they could, if we told them we need 100 of these and they got to be this size and so on, they'd think, well, of course they could do that. Where in reality, it's polar opposite, right? They're not set up for those small runs.
No, and a small runs, I mean, I'll raise some eyebrows with some things that I'll ask for around production as well. And, just even with my team, just to say, hey, listen, this has the future. It's a great customer. We want to supply them a small run because it also is part of an overall bigger project. If you have like Spectrio, they excel at managing content, a bunch of distributed networks and large arenas or things that Jimmy just mentioned. Well, in some of those cases, you may need high resolution displays. You might need high brightness. You might need a variety of different form factors that go into it, a variety of different sizes. Well, it may be the scope of the overall project that we're trying to keep some consistency on. So we may have some small runs of even specialty product just to enhance the overall opportunity and keep it consistent, both software and hardware.
Just for housekeeping purposes, while I remember, there is a Q&A function. If you guys have questions, we'll leave time at the back end of this to take some questions from viewers who want to ping something at Jimmy and Frank, and ideally about something having to do with the topic. But if you just want to ask Frank about the Masters and all that, you can do that too, I suppose.
I'm nervous if we open up the Q&A too much for this audience.
Yes, he went on Sunday. Fucker. I'm very, very jealous.
I was going to say we're open to all questions besides any questions from Tony Green. So we're just going to stop there, Tony. I'm sure you're on. So,
and we won't ask about your time in prison, Jimmy.
Yeah, that's right. Please don't do that.
So when you're talking about future proofing, is there a reasonable time window people should be thinking about? I hear about refresh cycles of every 4 years or 3 years. A company may say, okay, we're going to swap things out, or we're going to look at a refresh of the displays or the software or whatever it may be. How reasonable can you be in terms of future proofing something when technology changes? In some cases, not that quickly, but in other cases, particularly lately when it's AI driven, really quickly.
Yeah, Craig, once you take that one, I'll follow
Yeah,
up.
one of the things that we did at Bluefin a little over a year ago is we introduced our FlexOS displays, where a lot of that has a media player that can be added but doesn't have to be added. The reason for that is if they already have external media players, great, they can use them in our displays. The other reason is if we integrate a media player on, say, April of 2025, and the display is still performing and many, many years down the road, but maybe the content or the application needs a bigger engine at that point. Maybe it needs higher compute because there's some AI or API integration that's down the road, but the display still serving a purpose. You can still plug a different player in to drive that experience at that point. Maybe it's 3 or 4 years down the road and not have to require an infrastructure overhaul. And one of the things that really puts us aside too is when you need a complete infrastructure overhaul, that's costly. There's a lot of things that you have to roll out. It might be an electrician, it might be another network drop. There's a lot of things that you would have to do, even if it's just moving a display manufacturer that moves power from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. That may actually cause a lot of infrastructure problems down the road. being a custom company, we can fix that by respinning a board. But the future proofing is in 3 or 4 years from now, maybe you're going to throw a lot of different things at that display that you weren't planning on right now. And that having that Flex OS opportunity to just plug a higher end media player in 2029 really enhances that longevity of that project.
And I think from the software standpoint, it's going back to, again, starting with the why, right? So understand what the purpose is. Many organizations jump into digital signage for the aesthetic reasons, right? They think they want attractive displays in lobbies or customer facing areas, but they don't clearly define the purpose. And starting with the purpose, no, we want to sell more of this product. We want to make it easier for our customers and clients to engage with a particular store, or maybe it's a corporate communications play. And effective signage should always start with the goal. Like, what message are you trying to convey, and what problems are you trying to solve? If we know that, then we can see, okay, well, we have an amazing engineering team and product team, some of the smartest guys and gals in the space, and we're continually bringing stuff to the product advisory board saying, hey, this is on the roadmap for X date, but we're going to accelerate this for this particular client or vertical because we see a real opportunity. So understanding with what they need today, but also to Frank's point earlier, asking the questions, what does this look like a year from now? I'll give you one small example. We rolled out a pretty massive rollout Q3 2024. It is with a large grocery store brand. And the initial goal was to just focus on, we need dynamic menu boards for the deli section, for the coffee shops, maybe point of sale, or whatever the case is throughout the actual footprint of the location. That then quickly turned into audience measurement. Okay, now that we have the screens in place, let's advance the technology. Let's build in some other functionality, some other products to really enhance the overall experience. And that is the goal, right? To have those conversations early on to make sure without a shadow of a doubt, we're going to hit it on the head. We're going to knock it out of the park from day one, but also continually have those conversations of pulling in data from the industry, from your competitors, whatever the case may be, and say, hey, this is what others are doing in the space. Is this of interest? And where is it on your roadmap? Is this a goal of yours? So there's no real defined timeline. It's just being in front of it and continually pushing our clients, our partners, ourselves forward to say, hey, this is something that you should look at. This is something that's going to enhance the overall customer experience. I think
we've all been at this for a long time. One of the things that I've kind of come in the last 2, 3 years to realize more and more is customers that 5, certainly 10, 15 years ago really didn't know what they wanted. They just were thinking, oh, we're going to put some screens in. These days, I get a sense that, with some exceptions, a lot of the customers that you guys are talking to are on their second rodeo now. They've done this, they've learned from it, so they're reasonably sophisticated about what they want to do. Are there some common threads that you're seeing in terms of use cases, really effective applications? Jimmy mentioned audience measurement and analytics. That's been around for a very long time. But if you tried to sell that 10 years ago, it was mostly blank stares and, okay, we'll try it in one location and we'll see what happens. Now it seems to be pretty fundamental to how things are done.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, there's a handful of really exciting things happening in the space, and trends we're seeing, parallels we're seeing across various verticals or industries. I'll just give three, and really it starts with, or at least for me, the most exciting things are based around intelligence, interactivity, and integration. So for the first, AI-driven content automation. So AI is enabling smarter content scheduling and delivery, adjusting messaging based on time of day, audience demographics, engagement levels, or even inventory. The second would be data integrations and real-time feeds. So this is, to your point, this is kind of a must right now. And it's very exciting because Signage is increasingly pulling in data from CRMs, point of sales, traffic counters, social media, and more. This allows content to remain relevant and responsive, like showing wait times or weather updates or live product availability. And then the third here is what we just touched on, but it's computer vision and audience analytics. And that's with the use of anonymous video analytics and computer vision, Signage can now gauge audience engagement, measure dwell time, adjust messaging on the fly. This is a game changer. It's a game changer for targeted communication and ROI memeasurement.
So
Frank?
if I'm
Oh,
just
sorry.
I'm going to interrupt and stop Frank there, just because I wanted to follow up on that. Because what you're saying sounds really cool, really interesting. If I'm an end user and I'm new to this, you start talking about AI and computer vision and machine learning and all that, and I may be getting quite intimidated, saying,
Right.
well, I don't know jack about that. How would I even get started? I'm assuming that with Spectro's platform and solution stack that you don't really have to worry about that. It's kind of it's sorted. You just need to use it.
Yeah. So yes, absolutely. At the end of the day, we could take 1,000 steps back. At the end of the day, our goal is to make it easy for our partners and clients. We want our clients, grocery store example, we want them to focus on their business. They know their business better than anyone else. We want
Mm-hmm.
our tools and our tech stack, which is all encompassing and seamless for our clients and our partners to do what they do best. Right. So 100%. We approach it saying, hey, we're going to take that burden off of you. We can offer everything, or you can kind of pick and choose some things that make the most sense. Going back to the initial discovery call, it's critical. That's why it's critical to say, hey, this is we're the experts in this space. Allow us to consult and give you guidance of what we believe is going to help your business today. But 100%, it has to be seamless. It has to be easy.
My job's the easy job. Spectre and Jimmy have the hard job. They got to take all that integration. I just have to make Spectrio look good by putting my all-in-one, whatever they choose, to make them that Swiss Army knife. So my job is, I wasn't going to interrupt the smart people when you talk about data integration, API, AI. I'm just trying to put the engine that makes Spectrio the best solution for that customer. So, and obviously we go through all the POCs and all the testing just to make sure that those applications, those fancy applications and those acronyms and what the real smart people use, I just got to make sure that I put the right engine in to make them you guys successful.
And that's why
One of the
feel like this is why I feel like some people are falling short, right? Because there is truly a lack of alignment between hardware and software strategies, right? So one of the core challenges we see is a disconnect, whether it doesn't matter who it is. It could be us, it could be a competitor, it could be Bluefin, it could be their competitor, but there's a disconnect between hardware and software strategies. And without a unified approach, performance, scale, user experience can suffer. Sorry, Dave.
oh no, that's okay. I was curious with retail, which is obviously a very strong vertical. A lot of people are investing in retail media networks and so on. And one of the reasons I've been intrigued by Bluefin's growth has been the timing is just right for smaller form factor displays to fit into retail. The first go rounds of this stuff was big flat panel displays suspended from the ceiling or mounted on support columns or where they could fit. And they could rarely go into those locations where stuff is actually merchandised and sold because you don't want to eat up all the merchandising space. With your kind of suite, so to speak, of products, one of your things is your stuff can fit, right?
Yeah, so actually it's funny. We just came back from Shop Associates. Spectro was also there last week, where we integrate a lot of frameless displays into fixtures or pieces of furniture. So we kind of start there, and then a lot of that has transformed into just maybe like a small, like behind me, a 10-inch touch screen that was integrated into a piece of furniture. Well, now it may be a large stretch display that goes across a piece of furniture that is touch interactive, that is creating an experience on a 49-inch that's right in front of it. That's also in that fixture. Then the unique form factors come into play. We're selling more circles and squares than we ever have because it just attracts the eye, slightly different than a regular 16:9 format screen will. So we have the suite of product that we've introduced is really based on what our customer needs were over time. And then things get popular, right? Then and a lot of the things we were showing last week were countertop screens that does, that could be moved around. Maybe they're being used at a telecommunications store that repurposes that screen 7 different times. Maybe Samsung's running a promotion on their accessories and they want to move it over to the accessories, and then they want to move it over to an iPhone special that's happening. So there's a lot of different things that we do, but ultimately those products are requested at the customer. They may even start as more custom applications where we see more and more needs for over time, and then it becomes part of our core lineup, which the core lineup is what we stock here in the US, or we stock in Amsterdam, and we stock in Asia, because it gets the POCs faster. So you guys are able to, the folks like Spectrio that are on the forefront of these customers are able to get products in their hands, make sure their software works well, and deploy it to their customers, and then get through proof of concepts faster than having to wait for it to be produced.
One of the other things that I've seen and I like is the whole idea of somewhat more passive, less obvious interactivity. Uh, Obviously, with a touchscreen, you go up to it and you boink and uh, you find what you want. But there are all kinds of other sensors that you guys have worked with sensor manufacturers to build in, and I know with Spectrio, they've got technology that can work with presence sensing and change the message based on how close somebody is to a screen or when they come into a zone and all that. Can you guys explain how that works?
Yeah, so from our perspective, it's all about evolution, right? It's understanding what's been done in the past for a particular vertical or industry, and then evolving that to the customer needs. Retail is very different than healthcare, right? So in retail, going back to that, I mean, lift and learn isn't necessarily new tech, but when compared and integrated with audience measurement or camera technology or an RMN strategy, it makes an all-inclusive, robust offering to where it just makes sense. And I love what that you said, more of the passive, because everyone knows when you walk into a store, there's a giant kiosk right there and it grabs your eye for a second, but that customer may not be in the mood right when they walk in.
It's the wrong moment.
Yeah, it may not be a bad screen. It may be the best screen ever, the best software ever, but there's other ways, right? You
Yeah.
look at dwell time within a store and understand that, and everyone has different shopping behaviors. I'm the type of guy, I want to be in the store for 10 seconds and I want to get out. There's some people that love to go and peruse, and it's part of their journey, right? They like to go and try on different clothes or look at different items to sell, and all those little moments within a retail location where you can capture that audience, right? And even with the content, you still, even if you're capturing it in a more passive way, you don't have to put out a blinking ad or a blinking piece of content that says buy now. It could be suggestive, right? It could be something that doesn't feel like they're ramming it down your throat. It could be something, hey, if you're in this aisle for X amount of time, it triggers, hey, there's some other things that you may want to buy that are similar to this. And that's where it's exciting, because the partnership with Bluefin's fantastic, because a lot of our conversations are creative. It's collaborating on what we're seeing from our partners and clients, and the same thing with them. And so, about once a month, we have a call to understand and just share ideas. Like, what else is happening? What other feedback are you getting? And can we build a solution around it? And the great thing about Frank is he's always open to that. He's always open to say, hey, this is what we have. We'll take the idea. We'll do some testing. Maybe we'll build something. Maybe it's spec, maybe it's a pilot, but it's a wonderful partnership if you look at it. And Frank, I love the analogy you used of the engine, right? That's powering a lot of things that we do, but it's that sharing of ideas and collaboration which makes things go into reality.
Yeah, I mean, my job is just to make it plug and play and easy for the product to be used in the real world, right? And Spectrio's job to do the hard part from what are they going to put from their software perspective to make it sure it works on that operating system, and then I put that operating system, again, making it plug and play into our display. But I think Jimmy and I are really involved in the digital signage ecosystem, and whoever didn't have ecosystem this late on their bingo card is just making sure that you're constantly involved with what's going on, the trends of the industry. Goes back to the beginning. How do you want people to, what do you want them to do to draw their eye to that screen, or to enhance their brand? Do you want it to be an approach and physically interact? Do you want the content to change with a proximity sensor? Do you want it to be a lift and learn? Like Jimmy said, not a lot of those technologies are new, but my job is to work with that ecosystem to make it plug and play, so the CMS can interact and they can work with their customers, they can solve customer issues and make it simple, right? Because we go back to it, and that we don't want the end customer thinking it's complex. They would, if they think it's complex, they may delay their deployment. We want to bring all the parts and the pieces, make it plug and play, make them, whether it's easy or not, there's a lot of smart people that are working on these applications, but we want the end customer to say, wow, they've done this before. They know the parts of the ecosystem that can make this solution work, and they're trusted consultants.
Because the idea of like future proof, right? I think we all gravitate, Dave, towards hardware, or like, do we have the right stuff? What's the warranty? But it's beyond that, right? It really is beyond it. It's customer retention. It's customer engagement. It's are they happy with the product? And if we go in and say, hey, you can only use our software, you can only use this screen of this one application, it's going to limit the scope, right? Again, there's a good balance between standardization and customization, but we want to listen to the needs, and really the end goal is to keep our clients and our partners as long as possible. And part of that is the evolution of technology and hardware. So it's not just, you know, taking the future proof of just, hey, this is hardware that's going to expire. It's how do we truly grow with the client and a partner throughout the next 3, 5, 10, 15 years.
Is it a bit of a tell if you're talking to a technology company and you say, I want to do this, and they'll say, yeah, we could do that. We could put it on the roadmap, or we can put together a proposal for you on how we can develop it so that it'll work for you. I mean, sometimes that's just the reality, but I'm thinking in today's world, you need to have platforms that are already, as you were saying earlier, Jimmy, API ready, API friendly, hardware that's already got the ports and everything set up so that you could have third-party external sensors and triggers and things like that in there. If that has to be developed, that's a good tell that these aren't our guys.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll take the first crack at it, and I'd love to hear Frank's answer on this. But it's again, it's a good balance, right? We have to fulfill what we have today. We have 160,000, 180,000 locations. We have a big book of business. We have to maintain them, we have to grow them, but we also have a team that is dedicated to innovation and understanding that we have to be honest with ourselves too, and honest with the client, say, hey, this is on the roadmap, but we have a great team and a great process put together within Spectrio to say, hey, it's on the roadmap for Q4, for instance. Is this a time to pull it forward? And what is the risk and reward? And our CEO and our C-suite does a really good job of helping the sales team make those conversations, because we're not going to win every deal, right? It's just impossible to be everything for everyone. But I will say there is that bit of, you know, if your response to the industry is always, we'll get back to you, it's on the roadmap. No, like, we have a process, we have a team in place that their sole focus is innovation. And it's and it's not just this year, it's the next 3 years, right? It's understanding, again, having conversations with you and Frank and Tony at Snap and all these other wonderful people, and saying like, hey, like, what are you hearing? How can we better prepare ourselves to fulfill what we have today and grow the current book of business, but also be nimble and innovative enough to say we can get you to the next level, and here's a real honest timeline with that.
Yeah, the custom element of our company at Bluefin, it does get us involved in what we like to deem internally a lot of science experiments with our customers. They're like, what if? And they start going off on these crazy tangents, and it's like, all right, wait a minute, hold on. First, is it gonna end up in a reliable product? And second, is it scalable? Right? Those are the two things we always want to worry about. And it's not scalable if the science experiment turns into a $10,000 LCD display, right? It's got to be scalable over time. But I'll give you a good story. As we work with a large retail chain, and we're deploying a bunch of screens for them in their digital signage network. Well, the retailer asked us to do about 11 little tweaks to our product. We were able to do 10 of them very well, and then we told them why they shouldn't do their 11th. And it was because it was going to create a failure point that they weren't expecting when they asked us to do it, right? And it was like, ultimately we want to do what the customer tells us to do, but we're also going to tell them, hold on, maybe that's not the right thing. You're trying to solve something that doesn't need to be solved there. So scaling the projects, making them, or we can tell them too, it's like, hey, listen, that is science experiment, that added feature that you're looking for is going to be grossly expensive. We could do X, Y, and Z and accomplish the same thing instead. So I think one of the things that we do, and I mentioned earlier, is many times we aren't the first selected. Maybe they've tried to use good enough or a product that's off the shelf or a product that's inexpensive, or something that isn't going to be reliable and durable over time, and we come in second. Now, the good news about that is we can create a solution that's going to be more future-proof for them. They're going to be able to scale and use longer. The bad news is they've already been burnt. That end customer doesn't want to be burnt again. Their job may be on the line. So those are the different elements that we can do for customers as a consultative partner. Well, we love the ecosystem to say, hey, listen, let's bring the smart people in that got to make these APIs and its integration, and we're going to put in the all-in-one with enough compute to make sure that you have a good experience long term.
Right. All right, let's we've got one question in the hopper. Just a reminder to viewers, if they want to field a question to these guys, just key in your question. We'll get it addressed. The one we have is says, and this is a nice little compliment for Frank, a first. One thing we really value about working with companies like Bluefin is the hands-on support, especially how your team aligns with our Gantt charts and deployment schedules. Can you speak to how your internal teams manage timing from sourcing panels to final delivery and how that coordination helps avoid delays in large-scale retail rollouts?
Yeah, so the one thing that I'll say is that we manage our supply chain very efficiently. My team is a lot of project managers. They all wear a hat. That's a project manager hat. The factory and what we produce is generally a 4 to 5 week production time. If it's a more obscure part that's harder to obtain, we just let our customers know up front. What we try to do as a company that's shipping most of our stuff from overseas is we try to get ahead of those projects to tell them the stuff that we don't like and it's not sexy is how the product gets here and gets on the ocean. So if we know we have a project that's over 10 to 12 weeks, we try to save costs by working backwards, making sure we know when we got to get that order in, we know when we got to get it to production so we can get it on a boat and ship it here the most efficiently and the lowest cost. Because nobody really makes money on the transit, right? And a non-sexy part of these applications. So we really have to project manage and we have to work backwards to a schedule. We have super close relationships. I know I missed Dave when he was in Asia just by a week or two, but we work very, very closely with those ecosystem we mentioned earlier. So our vendors to make sure that we not only know what their roadmap is, but we know where there's difficulty in supply, where there may be difficulty in a 49-inch 4K, and we don't know what the production is going to be. So we try to get ahead of that. We work with both our distribution partners and our LCD providers to know what those look like. And then we're very, very transparent with our customers. And I think that is probably the key to everything is that transparency. So we'll let folks know that if there does look like there's a delay, there doesn't happen often, but if there is a delay with one of our suppliers that's having maybe their share of supply chain issues, and then we have the flexibility in supply chain. So we're not just operating on one platform. So we were able to service the customers timely if they have the flexibility. And that works well over time.
And if I could, I would like to take a stab at that. I know that was more directed towards the brilliant Frank, but we recently had a very similar experience. One of our largest rollouts of 2025, which will go into 2026, from a software perspective, it started with a pretty robust scope in itself. But as the conversations continued, and this particular partner in the healthcare space was looking to replace their current vendor, a lot of other things came out of those conversations. And rather than just say no, we built a process in place, integrating Gantt charts, integrating what they have in the field today, and saying, hey, we're going to take care of this part of the engineering and software development now, so we can go live, and then but we're going to listen and integrate all these other desires and all these other requests as we go forward. Right. So that is the definition of a future proofing conversation, right? Because we wanted to focus on, hey, how do we go live? It's this is a big opportunity for everyone, but also let's take those requests in and let's build another timeline for us to complete the task. And so at the end of the day, in the span of a couple months, we're going to have a go forward plan that's probably going to stand the time for a couple years, and it's going to hit the immediate need, but also give them a path forward that they didn't even know that they wanted or needed. Right? That's kind of the fun part about it. You start, to Frank's point, you start discovering all these things, and at the end of the day, we're going to have something that's going to be really robust and it's going to hit their current needs and future needs as well.
You guys have so admirably, I guess, uh, answered all the questions before they even get posed. So we don't really have any other questions in the queue. Last bit of advice. I know you've touched on all this, but if you had to, if somebody said to you, okay, I'm really concerned about future-proofing my digital signage network, what's that quick and dirty piece of advice that you would give to that person?
Jimmy, I'll take this
Jimmy.
one first, and I'll let
Okay.
you wrap things up. But I think my final piece of advice is just definitely to prioritize reliability and durability in selecting our hardware. Work with partners that work well with other partners too, right? Having a good hardware foundation is only one piece of the puzzle. You need to be choosing best-in-class partners that work well together, that everyone can sit on a call and it doesn't become a finger pointing game. If you need a flexible and scalable solution, choose the best-in-class suppliers to accomplish that, and partners that work well together.
And I would suppose also understand their supply chain, particularly these days,
Absolutely.
and support. Jimmy.
Yeah, yeah. And from my perspective, I think I said it earlier, but it's worth saying again. I think the key is to treat signage not as a one-time install, not as a one-time project, but as a dynamic communication tool that needs to evolve alongside the business and its technology landscape. And there's a ton of things that go into that statement, but it's really looking at the longevity of what the needs are today and what they're going to be a year, 2, 3 years from now. And that can, that goes back to the why, right? It goes back to what is the purpose, and what is the goal of the digital signage strategy. And the strategy is software, it's installation, it's hardware, it's all those things. And then the two additional things I would say is make sure there's not a lack of alignment between hardware and software strategies. That can just throw things off. And then scaling can be a challenge, but a solution that works well in a few locations doesn't always translate at scale. So expanding to hundreds of or thousands of locations and sites, especially across different states or countries, requires a scalable infrastructure, global support typically, and a consistent content strategy.
All right. For those who've listened and watched this, thank you for joining us. You can look out for an email with next steps on how you can get started with Spectrio or Bluefin or both of them. Thank you guys for taking the time with me today. Very insightful, and we'll catch you around.